Well, welcome. Today, of course, it's May 18th, and May is officially the API or Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And this program is special, called Breaking the Bamboo Ceiling. For those who don't know what the bamboo ceiling is, again, did you know that while Asian Pacific Islanders, we have twice the national average of advanced degrees, such as a bachelor's and higher, we actually hold 50% or less of the executive jobs. And so that's where the bamboo ceiling is, right? They kind of like instead of the glass ceiling for Asian Pacific Islanders, that is known as the bamboo ceiling. And today I'm excited. One of the key parts that we're really trying to fight against is to show examples of people, Asian Pacific Islanders, who have become executives. And to me, I like to call them, they're kind of a little bit like unicorns, right? Is because we're kind of rare out there. And we want to show that there are great Asian Pacific Islander executives out there. And we want to show the way for other people to get there, which really led our work. And this gentleman has definitely been an active member in our group, API Event Profs, standing for Asian Pacific Islander Event Professionals. And he just recently retired as the Chief Customer Officer, Head of Enterprise at Bisley. Let's bring in the one and only Kevin Iwamoto. Iwamoto. Oh my gosh! I put an M in your name. Iwamoto.
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 Yeah.
Let me try again. I gotta put Kevin off stage here now. Hold on. I gotta get this right. And now let's bring to the stage the one and only Kevin Iwamoto.
Yes. Very good.
I feel.
Hey.
Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Hi. I'm doing good, John. How are you?
Oh my goodness. Great. Thank you so much. I would love to hear, how is your May going? We're about halfway through this year's 2023's API Heritage Month. I would love to hear, how's it going for you, and like any either highlights or lowlights from this May.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it's Asian Pacific Islander month, I think is great. I've seen a lot of Asian American and Asian faces on TV, and definitely all celebrating that this is our Heritage Month. And I think it's a good month to create additional awareness that we are here. We're not all cut from the same monolithic cloth, and we all represent diversity at every level, in the community. So it's a good month to be showcasing our fellow Asian American and Asian Pacific Islanders.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Again, side note, you probably saw too, I helped produce the hybrid of a live 5,000 person event here in Seattle,
Yes.
the API Heritage Festal celebration, and just like Hawaiian, Samoan,
Yeah.
Tongan, Bollywood, Dragon dance, right? We had it all, and that's really one of the amazing parts about the Asian Pacific Islander affinity group is that it's
Yeah.
composed of over 50 different cultures. And so,
Yeah.
Kevin, why don't you take a moment for my friends who don't know you, introduce yourself, and also talk a little bit more about how you identify. So here, I'll help out here too. We'll also follow our good friend Joan Eisenstadt's accessibility piece by doing some visual descriptors. So an example might sound like, I'm John Chen. I'm a 55-year-old black-haired Asian male who identifies with the pronouns he or him. Today, wearing the striped purple and geez, I don't know, brown and other cool colors shirt, and identify as a third generation Chinese American born in Stockton, California. And I'm also the son of a paper, I'm a descendant of a paper son, which we'll talk about later. So how about you, Kevin? How about an intro from you?
Great. So yes, I'm Kevin Iwamoto. I identify with he and him. I am a third generation Japanese American who was born and raised predominantly in Hawaii. I moved to California in 1986. I'm son of a banker. My father was a banker in Hawaii. He was very unique and a trailblazer in his generation. He reached vice president status without a college degree in the banking industry in Hawaii, but he managed to earn his degree while he was climbing the ladder at the banks in Hawaii. Grew up in part of Honolulu called Manoa Valley, which is near to the University of Hawaii. I graduated from University of Hawaii with honors, and I was also on scholarship from Hawaiian Airlines. I've spent my career working for a lot of top companies, especially in the hospitality industry, Northwest Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, Hewlett Packard, as a global senior global commodity manager, where I was responsible for over $1 billion in spend um, worldwide for Hewlett Packard, including writing policy.
Wow.
Then before that, I was at the Walt Disney Company as a senior account manager, and I had a cool job there where I got to work with all the different Disney divisions and kind of educate the new employees at Disney University on travel policies and what they need to do, and also put out the Disney newsletter, travel newsletter for employees. That was really cool job. Got to work with all the different Disney divisions, of which there were more than a dozen. So that was great, and it kept me on the road a lot. But the biggest job I worked for at biggest company is Hewlett Packard. From there, I moved over into the tech side, working for various technology companies like Starsight, Active Network, Lanyon, and then went into consulting with Goldspring Consulting, and then decided to help out a friend, CEO of Bisley, where I was only hoping to be there for a couple of years to help him build his company. And but then the pandemic hit, and I had to stay a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I finally did get to retire at the end of March this year. So I've been retired since then and enjoying every single day of non-stress freedom, doing whatever I want to do.
We're just saying, Kevin, right? People are remarking on your virtual meetings that you look marvelous right now.
Oh, thank you. Not bad for an old man, right?
That's exactly, and my sister, they're retired too, and there's that stress is now maybe, I don't know if you're starting to recognize
Mhm.
the impact that like the micro stresses have when they all build up year over year and year. And so
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what are one, two things that you're doing right now that you think really fuel your mental health?
Well, the one thing is not bearing. I think the biggest stressors you get, especially the higher you climb the ladder, is the overwhelming responsibility for people and teams and revenue and all of these things that you oversee or are responsible for, and you kind of bear the weight of a lot of that. So, and for me, it manifests in the shoulders and in the back. And so I usually see a chiropractor every 2 weeks. And even he told me, like in the month or so that I've been, month and a half actually, since I retired, he said, wow, he says, the level of tenseness in your shoulders and your neck, as well as your lower back, is just like almost completely gone. So that kind of and he's right, because like I would always have like chronic back pain and stuff. Like I haven't really had a back spasm in like months. So I think that kind of says it all, right? Like you can spend more time doing things that are more relaxing and things that are less stressful, which, contributes to longer health, and, walking the dog and not having to rush because I have a Zoom meeting starting, and getting stressed out because the dog's not doing his thing, and I'm like, hurry up, so now it really doesn't matter how long he wants to walk. I'm happy to walk him, so yeah, it's been great.
One of my life sayings, Kevin, is that we spend half of our life learning pain control so
Yes.
we get something done, and then you spend the last half of your life unlearning pain control so we stop doing stuff that hurts us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in my case, I was traveling a lot, before the pandemic, and constant back pain, spasms, sometimes really bad spasms,
Mm-hmm.
very uncomfortable sitting down in an airplane seat for like 5 hours to get to the East Coast. And, and you never realize, that putting that rollerboard and your laptop bag, up and down from the overhead, as well as, carrying it around and checking into hotel and carrying it back to the airport, you never realize how much toll, wear and tear it takes on your body, as well as your feet, and
Yes.
your mental, capacity to kind of absorb everything,
That's
but
what they need. They need CrossFit for travelers, which is like
yeah.
50 pounds over here. You just do this for repetitiously.
Yeah.
That's the only
Yeah.
way, you can't get injured. Well, I do want to get to this really, really important fact, right, Kevin?
Sure.
Right? Again, you heard me say this stat, and I know that you may have experienced this. My own personal experience is that, right, I kind of got passed over at Microsoft, and then it was funny because to achieve this, I wrote my own business plan. And then finally, when somebody asked me, like, hey, do you want to ascend to the next rate? I actually told them no.
Good for you.
And I said, I'll tell you in 6 months why, because then I left the company and I started my own thing.
Yeah.
That to me, many Asian Pacific Islanders, especially ones that I know, took the path of saying, I got to start my own company to get in this ranks. And of course, I missed that advantage of like being
Yeah.
responsible for $1 billion, which at Microsoft I could have done easily because
Hmm.
right, they have like 50 of those $1 billion sitting around somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead, I did it on my own. So I would love to know, Kevin, what do you feel like? What are the key things that you had to learn to move from the worker rank or the bottom like it contributor rank to this executive rank? That's something I think that's super important to me, and I want other people to hear.
Sure. Yeah. Originally, my mindset was, it's whether no matter who I'm working for, I go back to advice that my dad gave me, before I left Hawaii to move to the mainland. And he basically said, look, you're going to be competing with in a very shark infested tank there. And here in growing up in Hawaii, you kind of have this idealistic view that everybody looks like you, and a lot of executives look like you and everything. But in the mainland, the new reality is you're competing with Caucasian people, Black people, Hispanic people, other Asians and whatnot, and you really have to focus, and you really have to um, carve a name for yourself. And my father gave me some really good advice, which is, you're just going to have to work harder. You're going to have to show up early, stay late. You're going to just have to do all of those things just to be on a level playing field with everybody else. And don't take it personal, and don't, be full of rage or resentment. Just accept that, that's what you have to do in order to climb the ladder and get some level of higher level success to the executive ranks and whatsoever. And he was true. And I followed that advice, and I really didn't focus on like what everybody else was doing. I was so focused on what I was doing, and whatever I was doing, I wanted it to be better than the best, so that people would notice. And I did notice, and people did notice. And what really, I think, accelerated my path forward is, there's a saying that a prophet is never honored in their own hometown. And the same is true with corporate America, right? So you can work really hard and you can create a little noise, and you might get like minor incremental advancements, but there's nothing that will accelerate you faster than when the industry that you're working in recognizes you. And so
Hmm.
found that by receiving accolades and awards and recognition from different industry publications, associations, whatever, being regarded as a thought leader and as somebody who thinks outside of the box and who's run successful programs before, I was never shy on sharing what I did in terms of best practices. And so there's a level of endearment and acceptance that happens when people see that you're sincere about sharing best practices and your knowledge, so that they can benefit from that sharing. So I was never one of those where, wow, I learned something really great, or I did something really great, but I'm not going to share with anybody. I didn't want to do one of these. I was always like, hey, let's share it with everybody. So I started writing op-eds. I started
Oh.
interviewed by, media publications, and I became a volunteer leader at, several of the associations that I belong to, eventually becoming president of NBTA, which is now GBTA, Global Business Travel Association. So it was really that outside acknowledgement and endorsement of, being a thought leader, being an innovator, being somebody on the fast track to rising, that really kind of accelerated my climbing the ranks, if you will. And so I kind of, I don't want to say avoided the bamboo ceiling. I kind of like got there in a different way. But there's different ways to kind of break through that bamboo ceiling. But
Yeah.
for me, it was just really getting public endorsement and acknowledgement and acceptance that kind of accelerated my path upward.
That social proof is so important.
Mhm.
And, sometimes I think people discount like awards and the accolades,
Yeah.
or they're just like, of course, or I don't know, there's some significant value. What was the first accolade or award that you won? I'm curious, Kevin.
Uh, So I believe the first one when I first joined HP, um, they didn't tell me this when I agreed to join, but the first month I got there and I was learning the lay of the land. I was in charge of airlines and car rentals then for HP worldwide. And in the first month, my boss told me, oh, by the way, we forgot to mention, you have to go out to worldwide RFP for car rentals. I'm like, what? Okay. But I thought, okay, Kevin, now's your chance to prove yourself. I had not really had too much experience in, globally sourcing car rental programs, but I had to come up with a strategy. I had to take a look at who they were currently using and whatnot. And just around that time, our procurement group, I wasn't part of procurement then. I eventually joined procurement several years later, but then I was working with procurement. And they had contracted with a third-party supplier who was innovating what they call online auction formats. I don't know if you remember that, John, when that came out, but they said, hey, you might want to consider doing that for your car rental program. And it was never done that way before. It was your traditional RFP, and then you have to sit down and go through all of the data coming back, and you have to kind of put it all into a grid sheet, and then sell to the stakeholders. It was a very lengthy process. So I thought anything that can automate and speed up the process, I'm on board. So I accepted the challenge.
Yeah.
So I did the first business travel industry online car rental auction, where I got all of the major car rental suppliers to participate. And this was new to them too. So, the saying, ignorance is blind,
Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't know what to expect, but they thought, well, we don't want to miss out on an opportunity to be HP's car rental provider for the globally, right? It's like millions and millions of dollars. So they all participated, and sure enough, the online rental, they were genericized, company A, B, C, D, and they all were able to participate in the car rental auction and see what the others were bidding. And so by dynamic competitive pricing tension online, virtually, the price kept going down. And so we ended up picking two suppliers because we had a lot of volume worldwide that one supplier just coverage-wise couldn't handle.
Right.
And it was very successful. Business Travel News put me on the cover and gave me my first award, which is the best practitioner for online auction, procurement for specific, car rental category. So that was my first award.
Before you pause there, I want to say, how much money do you think you saved the company?
I don't remember correctly, but it was millions of dollars.
It's got to be million. Yeah, I mean, every dollar that they drop a rate, you got to because now the volume. I mean, that's one of the things that corporations do really well. You got leverage, and when you have leverage, right, you can really, you can use that to help the company save money because they want all that business.
Yeah, and because it was something new and nobody had done it before, and I got that award, I had literally, I got to meet almost every large corporation travel manager, including Microsoft, saying, how did you do it? How do you do it? Walk me through it. And they were all starting to pile on and wanting to do it. And then the car rental companies realized, wait a minute, this is not good for us because we're,
they collaborate together and they keep their prices high.
Well, so what they started to do was they basically took a stand and said, we're not going to participate. So, there's a scary thing about being first to market, right? With something, it's like you don't really know what to expect, and you're just hoping for the best that you're going to come out with a good end result. But when you follow that, then it's almost like a multi-tier marketing, right? It's like the people who jump on board first get the most benefit. The people who jump on later, their benefit is not as great.
Yeah, so, the first mover advantage, right?
That's correct. First
adopter
advantage usually gets that power because nobody knows from a supply perspective what to expect, right? So in this case, we signed them up for like a 2 to 3 year deal. So they kind of had to honor that rate with incremental increases that were already preset. But everybody else who piled on later, the car rental companies realized, well, this is not good for us. So they basically declined to bid. So it kind of washed out. But for 2 to 3 years, I got really good rates for HP worldwide.
But I mean, you changed the industry in some way. So
Yes.
one of the things you said earlier is like never shy on sharing, which I also believe too. Like I like to give away a lot of knowledge, and
Yeah.
the reason why, too, is one is people get to know you. Two, the
Yeah.
law of reciprocity, which is
Yes.
usually you get back. And
Yes.
that's what people who try and hold stuff in. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they don't talk about their idea because they're afraid someone's going to steal it. The
Yeah.
problem is they don't talk about their idea, and they don't get all the people who are going to help them.
Yes. And
And
that's one thing I learned early on. You
so,
cannot do anything big like that without the support and help of other people. I mean,
yes.
that is just, if you create any good working skills, you should learn the art of networking and collaboration, because anything big that you want to do, it's not going to be done singly by you. You're going to need support from other people, other villages, other communities, and your job is to get everybody on the same page and move forward on your vision and strategy. And if you can successfully do that, you can make a lot of difference.
Now let me just check though. Never shy on sharing, right? And let's just radically generalize a lot of Asian cultures.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of Asian cultures where you don't toot your own horn, right?
Yes.
Like Asian cultures are not let the work speak for itself, and
Yes.
like saying. So I'm gonna kind of figure out like how did you balance those two, or did you make a different change or decision, to work like here in American culture and American companies?
Yeah, so some of those cultural imprints that we receive from our parents and our grandparents, John, and being third generation, I'm third generation myself. You have the benefit of picking up a lot of Asian cultural um, norms, if you will, from your grandparents and your parents, right? And definitely not tooting your own horn is part of more of the third generation, less so in the fourth generation, and much less so in the
Now they become influencers, right?
yeah. Well, because with social media, it's all about you now, right? So for us, and this is why third generation folks like us and the baby boomer generation have a really hard time on social media, because culturally they really are not supposed to be talking about themselves, right? It's always about everybody else. So I am guilty of that as well. And so what I decided early on is I recognized early that in order to make headway, I kind of have to um, acknowledge advancements that I've made, but not me so much, but letting my colleagues or letting other people toot my horn for me. And then the more recognition that you rack up, and you start to put that on your resume, you start to put that on your LinkedIn profile, you can then start to refer to that, like, if you really want to see what I can do and what I have done, go check out my LinkedIn profile, right? So that way you're not saying, hey, look how great I am, and look at all these awards I've won and stuff like that. You're basically directing them. LinkedIn for me was a lifesaver, because it really allowed me to share the successes that I've had and the recognition that I got without me saying it, out loud, which I'm still culturally, uncomfortable. Like I was taught, I can't help it. It's just, it's generationally imprinted on me culturally. And I was recently in an interview, and believe it or not, the interviewer said, well, I looked at your accomplishments, your career accomplishments. He said, like, you have like 2 pages of of awards and all these things. And he said, you never talk about those things. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, I do and I don't. I don't feel like I need to. I just refer people if they're really interested, it's there.
Yeah.
But I don't feel the need to say, hey, look at what I do, look at what I accomplished, because culturally I'm still uncomfortable with that. But I managed to kind of like find a balance where people know that in advance. And it's kind of cool, because what it does is it kind of sets the room, like before you even show up, people kind of know what to expect, and they kind of already know your experience and background, right? So it's more than just an icebreaker for me. It's just like, hey, I'm here, what can I help you with?
So here, I'll do it for you, Kevin, right? This is Kevin's LinkedIn profile. There's some of his articles. I mean, this is how I met Kevin too. Kevin, you did something, I think, for North Star.
Yes.
And that's how I discovered you, and
Hmm.
we got a chance to meet, and we've really gotten a chance to, do a lot more. And again, there's a lot of items on here: Gold Spring Consulting,
Hmm.
Lanyard. I mean, look at 13 experiences here. If we go through all of these, GBTA, and right, the only, still to this date, right, the only Asian Pacific Islander,
Yeah.
right?
Ever to be president and CEO of that association. Yeah.
So one of the things that I do want to get to here is that I think one of the things that you and I discovered over the last 2 years, and maybe you already knew this, is that allyship is so important,
Mhm.
specifically for Asian Pacific Islanders, this
Yes.
whole diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging thing.
Yes.
And I would love to hear, because like I think you just kind of said it. One is like pick up Kevin's tip here, which is use LinkedIn, right? Put LinkedIn and put all your stuff there, and then you
Yeah.
don't have to talk about it. So that way, that's a way he can honor his cultural norm while
Hmm.
still kind of getting it out there. And
Yeah.
then number two is this allyship, which is get other people to talk, about you.
Yeah.
Sometimes without even asking them is like the true Asian way in some ways.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your current thoughts, especially now after all these years.
Hmm.
Where does allyship fit into this whole equation for you about like an Asian Pacific Islander becoming an executive?
So for me, you're not going to be an executive without that allyship.
Hmm.
You don't cultivate that skill of, first of all, you have to be a very empathetic person, right? You have to focus on other people and what they're comfortable with, what their experiences are, how you can collaborate them to get on the same page as you in order to work on initiatives that mean a lot to you. And then getting them to not only just buy in, but being additional champions or arms of you out in the communities that you're targeting for to focus on. And so if you look behind any truly successful person, the person who's kind of creates a strategy or creates the product or the service or whatever the case may be, usually gets a lot of the accolades and attention. But if you look behind the curtain, you'll find that that person got there because of teams of people and communities that supported that person. And not just professionally, but personally as well. There's a personal sacrifice when you're climbing the ladder that your family is going to have to support you there, and because you can't be at 100% in your profession if you don't have the background and support of your family and your close friends, and
Right.
so allyship is really critical because it's a give and take thing, right? It's like, if you give this to me, what can I give to you, right? And if you can get into that mindset of how we can help each other, you have an ally for life, who's going to be there to support whatever you do. And the more success you build, the more credibility and integrity that you build with people, the more people want to pile on and help and support you. It's like, uh, knock wood, I have never been part of anything that hasn't succeeded. Why is that? It's not because of me. It's because of the allies and collaborations and situations that I've found,
Hmm.
with groups of people to support my mission, my milestone, my strategy, my goals, right? And I always never hesitate to give them the credit versus taking the credit for myself. And that is an Asian thing too. Yeah, I kind of admire white men who say, "Yeah, it's all me. I'm so great. I'm a genius," but it's kind of like BS, because I know a lot of these top white guy leaders, and they have tons of people behind them to help make them successful and continue that success. So whatever you see, and whenever you see a single person taking credit for everything, 9 times out of 10, it's a facade.
And then again, I think that's a key part in the perception of leadership that is changing, which is right
Authenticity.
authentically, yeah, authentic
Yes.
leaders are gaining more power than those who just used to have prestige and power,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And who do you want to work for? I mean, the real tell is when you move companies, or right, do a lot of people follow you?
Yes.
Right. And some people will, because if you're a great leader to work with, because of
Yes.
something as simple as, right, I'm the person who is acknowledging you. I'm the person who's watching out for you.
Yeah.
Take this simple tip from Kevin, which is the next time an award program comes out, don't nominate yourself. Think about three people you work with or you know really well or in the industry who are doing cool stuff and nominate them.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes don't even tell them. Let them figure it out later like who nominated me?
Yeah.
And eventually it'll come around and it'll be like, "Oh, well, Kevin did it." Right? And then later on,
Yeah.
they'll carry that piece. It's like a handwritten card except better.
It is. It is. And that's so true, John. Like I have nominated so many people who've won,
Mm.
and some of them figured it out. Some of them knew right away. It's like that you did that. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I mean, if you listen, if you're an influencer and you see talent, why not put it forward so that everybody else can see that talent too? So, I'm a heavy promoter of other people.
Mm.
I recognize talent when I see it, and I want these people to shine on their own. And believe me, you earn more loyalty, trust, and acceptance when you're doing that for other people. I, I have never what I found, John, and this is a real cliche, but I've experienced this many times. Whatever I give away, whoever I support, whatever good actions I've taken has returned to me tenfold, literally tenfold. Um, and
You can trust in it too, and you also have to have the patience saying it may not happen immediately, which is what a lot of times people think in business. Like
yeah,
I do X and I get Y. It doesn't work like that, but it does
no,
plant a seed, and then like maybe 5, 10 years later, something miraculous happens. Like that person maybe comes
yeah,
joins you at a team
yeah,
at a time when you need that critical teammate or
yeah.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I've had really wonderful experiences with people acknowledging that, when they get to a senior leadership role and publicly saying, I wouldn't be here if I didn't, if Kevin didn't mentor me or he didn't push me to, do more, think higher and, go for it versus just kind of staying in the background, and I'm proud of that. I'm more proud of the people who I've mentored that have succeeded and are in an executive role and, I won't, embarrass them, but, many of them are CEOs and CFOs and CPOs and, or senior VPs or executive VPs. And,
Yep.
there's, they've ascended to the highest echelon and I'm very proud of them.
That's very cool. So now like Jolene Jang, our good friend, says
Mhm.
sometimes people don't know that Asian Pacific Islanders have problems, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like they're like, oh, they're fine, right? Well, like what about
Yeah.
this affinity group or this race or this whatever?
Yeah.
But I would love to hear some stories from your past. Like I'm trying to think about, well, my most critical one was I had two teenagers throw rocks at me at Bellevue, like
Oh
in
my God.
2023.
Wow.
Yeah, after using a Chinese slur, and then I put my camera on them, and they started walking away. But when I turned around, I thought they were like gonna leave. I turned around, and one of them came back and actually threw a rock. Now, luckily, he's a horrible thrower. But the worst part too is that the kid who threw the rock was white, but his friend was black.
Oh yeah. That I don't understand.
And I'm just like, dude, who's your friend, right? Why are you
Yeah.
friends with this guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, that's not a work case, but I've also had some other work case things. Again, just,
Yeah.
being the other one is more insidious here in the Northwest, which is here in the Northwest. Quite often, nobody would ever call you right a Chinese slur word or whatever Asian slur word to your face,
Yeah.
but they'll quietly pass you over, or you'll quietly not get invited to something, right? And
Yeah.
that's I think the other insidious version. So I'd love to hear some examples of your career of challenges you had and how you may or may not have gotten over them. I'm just curious because you got now so much rich work experience.
You know, um, I, I was extremely fortunate early on in my formative years. And the reason for that is, I was born and raised in Hawaii. I did spend a couple of years right after high school in Japan. But I returned to Hawaii. And, in Hawaii, when you're API or AAPI, you're the majority there. I mean, so in fact, the Caucasians and the African American folks and the Latino folks are actually the minorities there. So you never, I mean, in Hawaii, you make jokes about other uh, racial groups. But everybody is like equal opportunity, like they would pick on the Portuguese, they would pick on, you know, in Caucasian and Hawaiian is haole.
Yeah,
And
white is a minority in Hawaii.
yeah, and honestly, the term dumb haole was used a lot by locals. So the Caucasians were actually getting harassed
Yeah.
for being, you know, less than smart than everybody else. And so everybody else was kind of like ostracized. But it's equal opportunity. You pick on the Filipinos, you pick on the Japanese, you pick on the Chinese, pick on the Portuguese, you pick on everybody was being picked on. So it was equal opportunity racism, if you want, but it was done a lot jokingly, but I tell you what was very unique is the fact that it's such a cultural melting pot is you learn other people's cultures because you have to. We're not monolithic. And so, I was very fortunate because I didn't grow up in a monolithic cultural society in Hawaii. It's very multicultural. So I learned to appreciate food and cuisine from other cultures, and even to this day, I know certain phrases and languages in Filipino and Chinese, and I know I can know and speak Japanese.
Wow.
It's just I know and can speak a little Hawaiian. I mean, so you learn so much about other cultures, which I think is a healthy thing, much better than what's happening today, where you're trying to cancel out other cultures and everything, ostracize people for not being, white or whatever. So I didn't, for most of my life, I'd say a good third of my life,
Yeah.
wasn't really exposed to a lot of that. I tell you, when I moved to California in 1986,
Okay.
that was the first time, and I think I was talking to Jolene on a webcast, and I kind of shared this story where I never, California is a pretty liberal, accepting state for the most part, Uh, but I never really experienced, I moved to LA initially, and I never really experienced any kind of discrimination until I was apartment hunting. And I saw this ad and I went to go check it out. It was this nice apartment complex in Studio City, which is very Jewish and very white. Um, um, and I went to the apartment manager and I asked for an application, and they said, lots of units available. So I went and I got an application, and the apartment manager said to me, he says, oh, we just rented out our last unit, so there's no other units available. So I said, oh, that's too bad. I said, well, can I be on a waiting list? He goes, well, we don't have one. So I said, okay, well, that's unusual. So I just kind of like said, okay, well, thank you. Did the typical courteous Asian thing. And I just kind of turned around, started walking out. Then this young couple was behind me. They were Caucasian. They went up and I could hear the conversation as I was walking out. And they said to the guy, oh, we came to see, if you still had units available. And he says, yeah, here's the rental agreement form. Just fill this out. And then I'll take you on a tour and you can pick your unit. So I thought, okay, I think I was just discriminated against,
I just rewatched Crazy Rich Asians, Kevin. So the crux of Crazy Rich Asian is then you go in and buy that apartment complex.
Yeah, just to get revenge, right? Yeah. Yeah. But really in my career, I think I never was the brunt of any overt racism. Like nobody threw rocks at me.
Right.
Nobody called me a derogatory slur.
Right.
What I did experience was Asian stereotyping, right? It's like,
Oh,
when in my
it's kind of like those micro stresses that you're talking about before in your career, right? So yeah, talk about some of these, because again, this is what I don't think people understand
yeah,
about what it's like, right?
yeah.
This body, at this time. So
It's this. I experienced more of the microaggression, Asian stereotype stuff, and I don't, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they were meant to be harmful or
Right.
intentional. It was just made out of ignorance. And the one thing I would say to people is, if don't take these acts of hate personally. It's ignorance. That's all it is. It's people's ignorance. And the only way to cure ignorance is to educate, and is to break stereotypes. It's to take the time to correct the stereotypical microaggressive ignorance that people project onto you. And so I used to do like I used to get very frustrated and angry whenever I encountered those things, and I would just gloss it over. Well, the last 5, 6 years of my life, I stopped glossing it over. So anytime I feel that this is a microaggressive act or this is a stereotypical comment, I correct it. Right. And I think you heard me mention this several times, standing at a conference buffet line, and, there was Asian food in the buffet line, and my friend for many years says to me, "Oh, look, Kevin, they have sushi. You must be so happy." And normally you would say, "Oh, yeah, I love sushi, da 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 da." And I went, "Well, yes and no, because I actually like Italian and Chinese food." Um, so, yeah, I do like sushi, but I find that sushi served in buffet lines at a conference like this is generally not good. So I won't even eat it, and they're looking at me like, "Oh, wow, I never thought about that." So it's kind of like taking the time to explain to people, like, I'm a third generation Japanese American. What does that mean? They don't know that, so whenever somebody comes at you with, "What country are you from?"
Mm.
You take the time to explain to them, "Well, my grandparents came from Japan. They emigrated to Hawaii. I am a third generation Japanese American, born and raised in Hawaii, educated in the US education system, and, an honors graduate from, my college, University of Hawaii." If you take the time to explain those things to people, they can't help but be a little bit more enlightened, so
Mm.
that they probably might not ask that question again, right? Or, "You speak good English."
Oh,
You know,
my joke for that one, Kevin. Have you heard my joke for that one?
no, no.
I don't speak Cantonese or Mandarin, but I speak perfect Californese. Do you know what perfect Californese sounds like, Kevin?
Yeah, I do.
Sounds like this, right? Dude,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
dude, right? And so and that's kind of my history of
Yeah.
assimilation. But yeah, so people don't get that. Even my kids are mixed race too, and they
Yeah.
have to struggle with this. People
Multicultural. Yeah.
they
Mhm.
ask, "What are you?" and they don't ask, "Who are you?"
Who are you? Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's such a small distinction, but right, you can hear the if you listen to it carefully. There's an objectification, and then there's this. I don't care who you are. I just actually kind of care, like what's up, right? And so
Yeah.
it's this
Yeah.
weird dynamic, and I don't know if you've experienced that too.
I have, because I have a very multicultural family, right?
Yeah.
And we have, different cultures, married into my family and extended family. And so, when you have multicultural children, it's, first of all, I think multicultural children are just beautiful because they have like the best of both, right? The problem with them is they don't know which side to identify.
Quite often.
And it's hard enough to learn a singular culture, much less two, or three or four cultures, depending on the ethnic background mix, right?
Well, and what's even worse, Kevin, like when I visited China,
Mhm.
on a roots trip, we went back to the villages where my grandparents grew up with my kids.
Yeah.
Then you get in there and you actually discover you're actually not a part of either of those groups.
Yeah.
Right? Because they see me and then they start speaking Mandarin or Cantonese,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then you have to
Mhm.
apologize. All right, and that
Yeah.
I don't speak, and then they kind of look at you. All right, and so now you're also not part of that group either.
Yes, correct. And I experienced that in Japan, right?
Yeah,
It's like I speak Japanese, but I'm not, I used to be somewhat fluent. I'm not anymore because I don't use it hardly.
yeah,
But they hear an accent. "Oh, you don't have a Tokyo accent, so you must be from the sticks," right? Or when they find out that you're Sansei or third generation Japanese born in Hawaii,
yeah.
kind of look down on you even more, right? Because you're not true, authentic Japanese. So, even we experience that in our own cultures, right?
Yep.
Our own heritage, right? But I do, I had learned, people, when I was at Disney and Hewlett Packard, especially,
Mhm.
I had, a lot of supplier negotiations and a lot of supplier account management that I was responsible. And, when people see your name, um, they they immediately stereotype you, right? It's like,
Wow.
and I've actually had some suppliers tell me, "Iwamoto, what is that?" You know, and I'm like, again, not who is that, but what is that, right? So you take the time to educate them, but the moment that they find out that you're Asian, the stereotype kicks in, right? And most Asian males tend to be not too assertive, not, you know, gregarious in nature, just very more on the quiet side, but more, contemplative, less verbal, and whatnot. And I'm a joke teller, right? So, or I have a fast wit, so I kind of make comments to kind of throw people for a loop. But what I made them understand is, don't stereotype me, because in negotiations, you will lose. Right? Like, because I will behave in a way that is very anti-stereotypical,
Yes.
that will throw you for a loop. And what I mean by that is, don't assume that I'm just going to be quiet, absorb everything, and not object or not push back. And so I used to use that to my advantage by questioning and pushing back. And it really rattled their cages, because they were not used to talking to an Asian male who was questioning what they were saying them, right? Or pitching them. And I would say, well, why is that? Or I don't understand. It's like you're saying X, Y, Z. And sometimes it's just downright stupid. So what I would do is, rather than, say that's stupid, I would always use the more, passive aggressive, let me understand, or let me repeat this back to you. So you're saying blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Right.
Is that correct? And they would look at me and go, ooh, no, that's not what I meant. I said, well, then what do you mean? Right. And so I would put them on the offensive, or the defensive, sorry.
There's something that's important here as an executive too, because again, part of being an executive here, your skills of negotiation and communication and rapport and relationship, right, becomes more and more important. And one of the things that I learned, okay, although it is a little stereotypical, is that during poker, right, I play a lot of poker. And that poker, I play poker obviously different than most other people, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who will like shut down and like not try and show you anything. I'm
Yeah.
actually the opposite. I try and get the table to talk. And when I get the table to talk, right, they end
Uh-huh.
up inadvertently giving me cues or clues or right, tells all the time in there. And then the other part that I do, Kevin, is
Yeah.
that one of my goals is quite often is to put other people on the table on tilt. Or what tilt is that they are in
Yeah.
an emotional state that is not their best. And then
Yeah.
even if they're great players, they play poorly because
Yeah.
they're encountering something they've never seen before. And they don't
That's
know.
right.
It's like your auction, right?
That's right. That's right. And if you don't exploit those moments,
Yeah.
shame on you, because really it's an opportunity to, break. Number one, it's an opportunity to break stereotypes,
Yes.
and it's another opportunity to break ignorance, right? Because again, biggest way to break any ignorant person is to really educate them, make the investment in time, educate them, right? Because the more you do that, the more we do that, they'll be more enlightened, and they won't even ask those questions, because they learn that that's not a good thing to ask, or that's irrelevant. It's kind of like, you'll love this story, John, because I was talking to a Caucasian male friend of mine who was attracted to this Asian woman.
Yeah.
Everything was going really, really great until he said to her, he says, I really love exotic women. And he says, boy, she went from being like warm and, really we're having such a good time, and she just turned into like this ice princess. Like, what did I say or do? And I said, okay, you need to stop using that term with Asian women. Exotic
Right?
is a stereotypical racist male comment that you should never, ever use when you're talking to an Asian woman or man. It's almost like you called her, some derogatory Asian ethnic name, and you're objectifying her,
Yes.
which she doesn't want to be objectified as an Asian woman, and so he, again, he was like, oh my God, I feel so horrible. What should I do? Da, da, da. So again, when you break stereotypes and you encounter ignorance,
Yes.
if you take the time to educate, I guarantee you, he never ever used that term again.
Well, the key thing that I've seen too, Kevin, is that one of my friends, Lonnie, here in Seattle, is a diversity consultant, and he actually wrote a book about 10 people who are members of hate groups, and they all converted. They all left. They left the hate
Yeah.
group they were in. And the
Yeah.
number one factor right after this, after educating them,
Yeah,
right? Is that all these people who left the hate groups made a friend in the group they used to hate.
that's great.
It's
But
almost impossible to
yes,
be racist against a group that you have a friend in.
not
Because,
only that, but when you learn and break that cycle of ignorance,
yeah,
it's really hard to go back there, because you're more enlightened now, which is why, I believe in an enlightened society. The only way to conquer hate is to educate and enlighten people, that this is not, what
I
you
love
think.
this. Jolene Jang is watching us here on LinkedIn, and she said, "Yes, true. All caps. Do not call me exotic."
Yeah,
I want to break some stereotypes here too. So one of my
yeah,
stereotypes, Kevin, is
yeah.
that I was a sponsored amateur skateboarder. All right. If you ever watched the movie Dogtown and Z Boys,
Yeah, I did love that. Yeah,
right, I'm two teams past that, and right, I had long hair at the time. I was
yeah,
a punk rocker. I actually led punk bands and taught my friends how to play.
love
So
it.
so Kevin, what are some of the things that you've done in your past to like that break, quote unquote, break stereotypes?
Oh, um, well, early on in my career, and you know this, John, but not a lot of people in the business world know this. I right out of high school went into performing arts, and and even in an ethnically rich state like Hawaii, where you have a lot of Asians, culturally as part of all stratas of society in Hawaii. To really quote unquote make it, you have to like perform somewhere in Waikiki, right? Because that's where all the big established acts perform. And so what I was shocked to find out is there was hardly any, if not any, Asian performers who could sing or dance or perform in Waikiki, other than a good friend of mine, Carol Kai, who was a very talented um, Japanese American singer and dancer, and she had shows and stuff. She was the only one. And I didn't know her then, but we've become very, very close friends, and we've actually performed together. And she's like a big sister to me, and I love her dearly. And she was my role model. And I thought, I am going to break into Waikiki. So I set that as a personal goal, and I achieved that, as well as, doing some recordings and doing some TV work and some modeling and some stuff like that. But the one thing that I heard all the time in Hawaii, which is really shocking to me, was, well, Asian males don't have a lot of talent. They don't sing and they don't dance, and you know, they're just not good performers. And so I was hell bent and determined.
Just from that statement, right? It's a
Well, yeah, because I take things like that as a personal challenge, and my as our dear friend Joan Eisenstein would say, my chutzpah kicked in, and I said, oh well, you know what? Let me show you. Right. So I managed to trailblaze several things, and to me that was such a great satisfaction for me, because now Asian males, Asian females, they're accepted almost everywhere, but look how long it took to get to that point, where you can have a Korean boy band become like the top group in the world, right? It took like, and I'm not ashamed to say it, this is like 4 generations or 4 decades later, where you have that happen. But it's great that it happened, but look how long it took to get there.
Well, Jolene asked for band photos, so I got band photos. This is
Ah,
here on Spotify. If you look up the best of Kevin I, you will find 10 songs from 1980, 1985. And the music though is kind of a key piece here about, I don't know, what did music teach you in the business world? I'd love to hear that. Whereas, that experience, right, I think may have had an impact on your executive life.
it definitely did. So one of the things that when I mentor people is I gauge how comfortable they are in public settings, public speaking, being on a stage, talking to a camera, being media trained and stuff like that. Because in order to climb the ranks into the executive levels, you've got to master the art of communication, and you've got to be comfortable in your own skin and in front of thousands of people, hundreds of people, or 10 people. And so what entertainment did for me is, first time I walked on a big stage at NBTA, there must have been about 4,000 people in the audience. And people were like, aren't you nervous? And I'm like, no, I know what I'm going to say. There's a teleprompter. I practice. So why should I be nervous? Because there's thousands of people out there. And I'm like, okay, but so what? It could be 10 people. It's the same thing for me anyway. Right. And so it really, and, being a performer, if you don't know how to communicate with an audience, you're dead in the water. So I learned,
Yes.
to recognize body language and facial expressions and how people are reacting to you, because you have to pivot on a dime. If they're not reacting to you well, you're going to have to do something else to,
Yes.
to cheer for you. So I think those are really valuable experiences for me because it didn't matter who my audience was, whoever I was talking to or negotiating with. They could be a CEO, they could be a senior vice president or whatever. It did not faze me one iota. And even to this day, being around celebrities, I've been around a lot of celebrities. I am not a groupie. I respect their privacy. I admire them for what they do. I think it's a really, really, really tough profession to be in. And
Yeah.
I respect what they do and their choice to be in it. I got out of it because, I'm Asian and, the chances of becoming as big as Lionel Richie is not great. So, I learned to do what I had to do and get out when I needed to and made a good life and career for myself away from entertainment. But I totally respect and the experience that it gave me and the background that it gave me and the confidence that it gave me,
Yeah.
to communicate at all levels, not just big audiences, but small audiences, not just rank and file people, but executives. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. And
And
confidence is something that is very anti-Asian culture. Right?
oh, well, that's true too. Like the apologetic and like a lot of these other types. There needs to be, as an executive, I think one of the things you have to have is a presence, and presence is also built upon confidence.
Yeah,
And in confidence to lead other people to make key decisions when they come to you.
yeah.
Those are all really, really important things. So yeah, thank you for allowing us to share a little bit more around that and how that can play in. I think people need to realize that when you're a leader, you got to draw from your past experiences, whatever
Yeah,
they are,
yeah,
and find those parts that actually support you being an executive and bring them forward. Because I
right.
think you spent the time doing that.
Yeah.
Speaking, like, I'd love to hear. Right, one of our goals is to try and get more of these Asian Pacific Islanders into executive positions. So, what are like some of Kevin's top things that you would tell the aspiring Asian Pacific Islander executives that they really need to focus on or to do?
So the one thing I say is you have to have confidence, and confidence is not arrogance. Those are two different things, right? If you have to do several things to become to elevate yourself into senior levels, and you need to be comfortable doing this. You need to be confident because people do not follow other people. People do not follow other people's strategies if the person that they're engaging with is not a confident person, right? And again, confidence is not arrogance, right? There's arrogance. I won't mention names, but there's senior leaders who really are full of themselves. That's arrogance. That's not confidence, right? Confidence is also a big part of good communication skills, right? It's learning how to manage and speak to every level that you're dealing with in order to get engagement and support for what you're doing. And that means, how you address and talk to senior leaders or executives, how would you speak to associates and colleagues, and how would you speak to rank and file, just to paint the vision for them. One of my favorite stories is when I was at Disney. There was a story about Walt Disney, and when he built Cinderella's castle in Disney World down in Orlando. Normal construction protocol is you would build that last. You would not build that first because it was the center stone or the cornerstone of the park, right? But Walt Disney asked the engineers to build that first, which is completely backwards and reverse from how you would normally construct an engineering project of a very comprehensive theme park. And somebody asked him why, when they opened, why did you choose that strategy and communicate that strategy to everybody and get everybody on board to building that first. And his response was, and I'm not quoting him, I'm just like paraphrasing. His response was, because I wanted everybody working on the theme park who came to work every day to see the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's ways of showing people the vision, right? You can build Cinderella's castle and point to that and say, this is what we're building, folks. When you show up every day and you build this theme park, this is what people are going to come for, right? And you get excited, you get motivated, right? You jump on board and you say hell yes, and then you support that vision, right? That was a very articulately communicated vision. The other way is being really good about communicating at all different levels and understanding that what you say, what resonates with executives, is not necessarily going to resonate with the rank and file or your colleagues or other villages that you're trying to bring on board for the journey. So you kind of have to be open-minded, empathetic, and understand what is going to get them to understand and support this strategy or this vision. And it's going to require really good communication skills, right? So do your homework, understand your audience and your personas, and then build your pitch accordingly. Because if you don't have an elevator pitch for executives, you're not going to win them over. If you don't have a more comprehensive pitch for the people that need to join you on this journey and this vision, you're not going to get it done, right? Because they're not sure what you're trying to do. And you have to, it's not a one speech type of thing, one communicate type of thing. It's a consistent communication so that people stay on board. Mm-hmm. And if you have to pivot, you can pivot, but people know that you're pivoting. You know what I mean? So it's not a one-stop shop in any way, shape, or form. You have to constantly, I find that communication is a constant thing. And if you need to learn how to manage and be an expert at communicating.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin. You're in your later stage of your career.
Yeah.
Close with this question. What does Kevin Iwamoto want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered as somebody who cared about the greater good, and who was, always trying to get the best out of people and myself. But to me, it's like the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So it's really that, and also, the golden rule, right? Which is something my parents ingrained in me, which is, treat people with respect. Because if you want to be respected yourself, you really need to treat others with respect. Don't look down on other people. Try to be more empathetic and understanding where they're coming from. And only, by doing that, you can bring out the best in people.
Outstanding. Kevin, thank you so much. And again, thank you
welcome.
for your continued work on API Event Profs and the many other things. That's what I'm most excited about, that you and I talked about a year ago. You're saying, I get to shift my skills and my careers now to things that I really love and really passionate about.
Absolutely.
Wish you good luck for that. We've put your LinkedIn profile. If you want to reach out to Kevin,
thank you, sir.
LinkedIn profile. And of course, you should read his LinkedIn profile and learn something from it. And with that, and again, Kevin, I wish you a great rest of the API Heritage Month, as well as I think you agree with me, it shouldn't just be 1 month, it should be all year.
I agree. It should be every month.
Outstanding. Thank you for your time, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, this is John Chen, and we just got a chance to hang out with Kevin Iwamoto here about breaking the bamboo ceiling. And I hope you listen to a lot of those tips. Some of them are easy, like focus on your LinkedIn, right? And some of them are great, which is nominate people you know for awards, right? And that are some of those things that you can do. Those are tangible actions that you can take away from this talk. We look forward. We hope you have a great Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Think about what you can do, like visit something in your city, look for something online. There is a lot of programs going on specifically in this month. And, do the last thing that we talked about. Make a friend, right? It could be Kevin, myself, or anybody else that are good friends that we know, and we'll find out that your life will be enriched too. We look forward to seeing you again, and if you want to be the next person to be interviewed, click the link and click to interview. We'll hopefully see you online here. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Don't we start people and keep whole people? Show you got heart. No,